I am very pleased to organize the first of three panel discussions in the context of the AI Tennessee initiative. The more specific context is a seed grant that is dedicated to outreach and engagement in order to communicate and relay information about the seed grants that have been pursued in the context of the initiative, which was created a bit more than a year ago. Let me first introduce the speakers, and then we can start with the presentations, etc. So alphabetically, first speaker is Courtney Cronley, who is a professor at the University of Tennessee in the College of Social Work. She investigates how the built environment contributes to social being with a focus on women and children. She utilizes critical feminist and community-engaged pedagogies, as well as theories of critical race, intersectionality, social inclusion, and social justice. I also should mention that Courtney Cronley is the co-director of the Center for the Study of Social Justice, which also will host the result of the seed grant interviews that we have been conducting and this panel discussion in this context. Second presenter is Dr. Kenneth Fleischmann, who is a professor in the School of Information at UT Austin. He is also the founding chair of Good Systems, Ethical AI at UT Austin, one of 3 university-wide research grant challenges. His research on the ethics of AI has been funded by the National Science Foundation, the Institute of Museum and Library Services, the Intelligence Advanced Research Project Activity, Microsoft Research, Cisco Research, MITRE, Micron Foundation, and the Public Interest Technology University Network, leading to 7 Best Paper Awards and 3 Impact Awards. What else could we ask for? Next will be Dr. Chikun Liu, who is an assistant professor of data science and affiliated assistant professor of psychology at the University of Oklahoma, and directs the OU Human-Computer Interaction and Recommendation Lab. His research focuses on the intersection of human-AI interaction, informal retrieval, and cognitive psychology. His work applies the knowledge learned about people interacting with information in psychology-informed user modeling, proactive research recommendation, online evaluation, and nudging in conversational systems. And finally, the third presenter, who also is a faculty member at the University of Tennessee, is Xiaopeng Zhao. Dr. Xiaopeng Zhao is a professor of mechanical, aerospace, and biomedical engineering. He has been a professor at the University of Tennessee since 2019. Before that, he was at the National Institute for Mathematical and Biological Synthesis. He also has been a research associate with the Department of Biomedical Engineering at Duke University and a research associate with the Department of Engineering, Science and Mechanics, Virginia Tech. His research is on brain-computer interface, wearable healthcare, computational neuroscience, computational physiology, biomedical informatics, signal processing, machine learning statistics, epidemic modeling and control, and related themes. Dr. Zhao is also one of the key players in a newly formed college. The acronym is KEX at the University of Tennessee, and Dr. Zhao has been in charge of creating 2 online degrees on applied AI that will be offered starting in the coming academic year. Okay.
Minor comment. First of all, I have been at UT since 2007, not 2019.
I will correct that.
Sure, make sure correct that. And also, the AI programs we're creating at the KEX, so they're not online program. We have created the Bachelor of Science degree program in Applied AI at KEX. It will be launched in fall, in the coming fall semester.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we'll switch now to initial statements by each of the participants in this panel discussion. And I've asked panelists to address how your work relates to AI, what kinds of research questions you've been pursuing, how you find AI to be an important aspect of the work that you have been pursuing in your particular area. And each speaker will have between 7 and 10 minutes to introduce their work. And then we'll switch over to a set of questions. So let me switch the modality here. Okay, Dr. Conley, if you would be willing to take the stage first. Thank you.
Okay, sure. So the first question, or I guess just globally thinking about AI and ethics. So if we think about AI, it's what we would consider, right, a transformative event in our society, like a true shift in how our society is functioning. And as a result, I think that's why ethics is necessary in the conversation. There's a sort of a pre-AI and a post-AI. You can think about things like the Industrial Revolution or the telephone or the car. Those are all sort of examples of disruptive technologies that have been introduced into society and have fundamentally changed the way we interact, how economics work, how social relationships work, how politics works. I think AI would be included in that set of disruptive technologies. So when we then think about what occurs with a disruptive technology, we have to think about how does that influence the way we as humans interact with each other, and does that change the equation, so to speak? So I just kind of, I found a reading that relates the issue of AI and ethics and social justice to the capabilities approach. And I thought that this was a really good framing for this general idea of AI needing some sort of ethical grounding. So the capabilities approach is this basic fundamental social justice theory that says that in order for people to have a just society, everyone has to have granted a set of capabilities. Those capabilities allow us to sort of have our own choice, self-determination, autonomy over our functionings in society. And AI is fundamentally shifting some of those capabilities. So Martha Nussbaum laid out this idea of the capabilities approach in social justice, and she listed 10 capabilities. So some of the examples that were provided in the article include things like life, bodily health, imagination, thought. But you think about how AI is influencing life, so people's ability to live until the natural end. Factors such as natural disaster prevention, war zones, things like that. Bodily health, think about precision health. And so bodily health is just being able to have a good quality of life, to be in good health. AI is fundamentally shifting how we think about providing healthcare, diagnosing, being able to predict certain illnesses and things of that nature. So in all these different areas where you have to have basic capabilities in order to have a socially just life, AI is having some sort of role in that. Even think about like smart transportation. So one of the capabilities that's listed is bodily integrity, which would be included under this idea of mobility. And when you have smart transportation, you have a system in which AI is now influencing people's mobility. So again, transportation, mobility playing out into our capabilities and our social justice. So essentially, if you think about all the ways that we need to have capacity to be humans in society, everyone has to have equal opportunities to those capacities, and the risks that are also embedded within those capacities need to be equally shared across society. And so if AI is introducing new benefits and new risks across all of those capabilities, then we have to be thinking of AI as having some sort of ethical set of parameters that we need to develop to understand how it could either disrupt society in ways that introduce new inequities, or disrupt societies in ways that could produce new equities and new benefits for more people. So I think AI aligns very nicely with this issue of capabilities to create this sense of a compelling argument for why we need ethics within the context of AI. And I really like to cite the article that I read that I thought framed this so well for me, because I don't want to, I think it's important to recognize this person's work. But that would be my sort of preliminary statement about it. And I'd love to kind of feed off of what other people are thinking.
Okay, thank you very much. Dr. Fleischman, would you like to go next?
Yes, absolutely. So thank you, Dr. Thompson. I want to build on the great points that Dr. Cronley just made. So I think given the huge ethical significance and impacts of AI that Dr. Cronley has so excellently summarized and synthesized, it's really critical that we are preparing the next generation of AI developers and everyone who's going to be involved in creating AI and using AI to consider the ethical implications of their work, as well as to raise the awareness of the general public of the use and role of AI and the ethical implications of AI. That's one of the things that makes me particularly excited about the new applied AI program that Dr. Zhao is leading at University of Tennessee, Knoxville. I think that's definitely the kind of program that we need to prepare the next generation of students to think very thoughtfully, critically, carefully about these issues. At the University of Texas at Austin, we have actually in fall of 2021, we launched a new major in informatics in the School of Information. And one of our concentrations is human-centered data science. So similarly, in the human-centered data science concentration, we're trying to make sure that students are thoughtful and critical about the ethical implications and considerations of the technologies they're developing. In technology development, there's a very easy tendency, a very common tendency to stop thinking critically and just do things effectively on autopilot. So Langdon Winter describes this as technological somnambulism, sleepwalking through technology. And so the idea here is that when you face a decision, some kind of design decision that might have some ethical implications for end users or for others who would be affected by these technologies, you do it because that's how everyone else is doing it, because that's what was expected, because that's how you learn to do it. You don't stop to think critically about the ethical considerations and implications of the work. So since 2007, I've taught AI ethics, information ethics, IT ethics courses at 3 different universities, and more programs than I can count, including the new Masters in AI that UT Austin just launched, where ethics in AI is the only required course in the Masters in AI program. And my goal in that course is not to turn bad people into good people. I tend to think that students who are enrolled in, I mean, certainly the universities that I've been affiliated with and all of everyone here, and generally speaking, I mean, I generally think that people are good by nature, most people, and trying to convert someone at age 18 or 22 or whatever advanced age to, you know, from a bad person, however you might define that, to a good person would be a bit challenging, because who we are as people is defined fairly early in life and can be, you know, fairly hard to change over time. But rather, I'm trying to help, you know, wake up these students to realize the ethical importance and significance of the decisions they're making. And another tendency is to design technologies for ourselves. And that's something that we see definitely in human-computer interaction and user experience design research that in so many cases people are designing technologies for themselves, and then it's hard to find a market for those technologies or any kind of acceptance for those technologies because people didn't do their homework of finding out if there were actually users who wanted those technologies and if they could understand how to use those technologies. Technologies also need to be aligned with the values of users from the perspective of value-sensitive design from Batya Friedman and colleagues. So it's really important that we're thinking about the broad range of users in a global society. So in the AI ethics and related courses that I teach, I always teach a broad range of ethical perspectives. Currently, I'm teaching 10 ethical perspectives, 5 of which are non-Western perspectives. One is a feminist perspective, ethics of care. So trying to be as contemporary and global as possible in thinking about how students come at these issues of AI ethics. So they're first of all realizing that there are a broad range of people in the world, and it's important these technologies work for everyone. So I think that's realizing the ethical significance and implications of the technologies that folks are developing and the wide range of users and others affected. Designing for all of those populations are important considerations. Thanks.
Thank you very much. So our next speaker is Dr. Zhikun Liu. So if you're ready, please take the floor.
Thank you. So as a faculty member researcher at Information School, and when I was doing my research and teaching, I'm mostly focusing on the information perspective of AI. And in my research, I've been looking at how people interact with AI, and especially how algorithmic biases and cognitive bias affects the way in which people interact with AI and judge the performance and their experience with AI. So in many of the tasks that humans have been doing, except the tasks that are fully automated, there are a lot of complex tasks that often start with interaction with information. So before the era of AI, people started with when they try to get information, they start with personal interaction and also getting information from library resources, and then they can get they also get information from search engine. And then we have different types of conversational systems and chatbots, and provide more access to information, not necessarily quality information, but more access to information for people with different tasks and different needs. So in that context, my research has been trying to predict human behavior in their interaction with information and AI-assisted systems, and also understand people's cognitive states and biases and constraints when they interact with AI systems, and also understand human vulnerabilities when and what makes them vulnerable to, for example, to misinformation, to harmful contents, and also to biased, unfair information. So I think in terms of at the intersection between research and practice, is before AI can do more and more tasks, fully automated manner. When we look at people doing tasks that involves intensive information activities, we need to make sure that people have access to fair and unbiased information, and also from an ethical perspective, their biases, their beliefs and misbeliefs, and also their cognitive constraints need to be taken into consideration. So one important direction, research direction in information science field is information and digital inequality. So people look at information infrastructures and also their people's different access to information, how this access are restricted by infrastructures and devices, and how they are affected by the way in which people interact with information and their knowledge background. So with AI, this direction, this kind of trend can go either way. If we handle AI properly and we utilize the scalability and the computational power properly, we can perhaps develop more customized AI technologies that takes into account people's vulnerabilities and their biases and provide more personalized support instead of exploit their vulnerability and their bias and make more people, become more vulnerable to misinformation. So one of the threats with the current AI technology is that in terms of misinformation and disinformation, it essentially lowers the bar of launching a disinformation campaign. So before this, if you want to, to spread and launch a disinformation campaign, the bar could be at a PhD in psychology, for example, to make sure that the things you are spreading, the things you're developing are persuasive and you can make people to accept. But with the support of AI technologies, this becomes easier and people become more vulnerable. And also from the regulation perspective, it's become more difficult to capture those threats and also to make proactive interventions to reduce the risk and reduce the threats. So I think these research problems and practical challenges that involves human information interaction is something we should pay more attention to, and also think about the existing challenges with respect to information equality, with respect to human bias and vulnerabilities, and how do we make information more accessible and more make sure people have access to quality information education is one of the main challenges we should tackle in the era of AI, and also from the ethics perspective. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Dr. Xiaoping Zhao.
Okay. All right. It's actually very encouraging to hear the talk from the other speakers. I'd like to share my perspective, probably from a slightly different perspective. I'm an engineering professor. My research is focused on developing AI and robotics technology to help persons that live with Alzheimer's disease and the related dementia. So our goal is to develop so-called assistive technology that can improve the quality of lives for these people. So my interest in AI mainly stems from its potential to create a personalized and adaptive solution for very complex healthcare challenges. So AI actually provide a lot of possibilities and greatly improve the potential, the possibilities, improve the future of the potential quality to serve people and the variability of the functions that can be used in daily life and so on. I can give a specific example. About 2 years ago, I remember that I had a very intense discussion with my colleagues on a research problem. We were developing a chatbot, and we want to develop this chatbot that can engage in conversations with Alzheimer's patients to deliver so-called reminiscence therapy. Patients with Alzheimer's face so-called short-term memory loss, and probably don't remember what happened a few minutes ago, don't remember what happened yesterday, but they still have very good long-term memory conserved, so they remember things happened years ago, 20 years ago, 50 years ago. So reminiscence therapy has been proved to be a very effective approach that can improve the emotional well-being, can improve the physiological well-being for patients. And we want to do this by creating a robot that can engage in reminiscence therapy by presenting pictures to them, can help a person to talk, recall good old days, look at the pictures together, enjoy music together. But this is very, very difficult. So we were talking about how to implement this using Google Dialogflow, then then develop reinforcement learning algorithms to improve the quality and so on. But the biggest challenge limitation is you don't have too much. We don't have too much data, so we will have very limited data we have from our interaction with a few patients. That makes the research very, very challenging. So a few months after that, ChatGPT was released, and ChatGPT make everything much easier. A lot of the challenging research problems become irrelevant. So we were struggling about creating this AI chatbot that is able to understand human language and so on. That is no longer a problem, thanks to ChatGPT. But on the other hand, many new problems arise because of ChatGPT, right? So when you're talking to ChatGPT, you're sending your information data to OpenAI, to the company, and for the privacy issue, so whether the response from AI, whether they are accurate, whether they are legit, that's also questions and so on. So that's why I believe ethical consideration is very, very important. We have to pay attention to this. So I'm not an expert on ethical considerations, but I appreciate the opportunity to engage in this meeting panel discussion with the experts. I echo Dr. Fleischman's emphasis on human-centered approach when developing AI technology and advancing AI research. I started to work on research for Alzheimer's disease and related dementia about 15 years ago. Back then, in the United States, we have about 5 million people that live with Alzheimer's. Over the years, the number has increased. Today, we have almost 7 million people in the United States living with Alzheimer's. But Alzheimer's and dementia is not a number. It's not just a number, right? So if you don't work out the research lab, it may be a number to you, but you really need to work out the lab, go to the field, meet with people. So in the last few years, my team has been visiting assisted living facilities, senior centers, clinics, churches, and many places in Tennessee and in Kentucky. So we met a lot of people. We met patients, caregivers, family members, nurses, physicians, also policymakers. We attended events organized by Alzheimer's Tennessee, Alzheimer's Association, Pet Summit Foundation. So those events greatly changed my perspective. So from just a researcher to have a more personal understanding of the disease. For example, when we bring the robots to assisted living facilities, a lot of older adults there, they were very excited when they saw the robots which can sing, dance. They want to hug the robot, touch the robot. They want to sing along. They want to play games with the robot. This is very, very encouraging. So because we see the potential of our research be used by those people to change their life. So definitely greatly boost our confidence and motivation. But on the other hand, not everybody we met loved the robot. There are a small percentage of people we encountered. So once in a while, someone will say they don't like the robots. They're scared of robots. Older lady told us that she was afraid because the Pepper robot we're using have a big black eyes. To her, the robot looked like an alien. The eyes were creepy. So those first-hand experience, both positive and negative, help us to have a new understanding, appreciation to the disease, so that it's not just about what program, which machine learning algorithm, what data you collect, and which programming language you use. It's about which person, what kind of life they have, and how the technology can help to address the challenges they're living. So by talking to, by meeting people and talking to those individuals, I have heard a lot of interesting story. So I'd like to share the story of another gentleman. He lives in Knoxville and used to be a scientist, and he has been living with mild cognitive impairment for about 10 to 12 years. And so when I asked him about his experience in terms of so-called forgetful moment, right? So because according to literature, Alzheimer's patients experience so-called forgetful moment. They may forget what they're doing and so on. So I asked him, because he's a very intelligent person, because he is well-educated, working on science for a long time. When I talk to him, I cannot tell that he has cognitive decline. He looks like a very intelligent, he's talking in a very intelligent way, very engaging way. So I was curious whether he ever experienced the so-called forgetful moment in his life, how much the disease has bothered him. So I asked him that question. He said he thought about the question, and then he said, maybe I experience it 2 or 3 times a year. Does not bother him at all. Does not bother him that much. But then I asked his wife the same question. His wife said he has this problem every day. So he will be asking what time is it again, multiple times throughout the day. And he does not remember he asked this question. So it's very important to talk to those people and then engage with them closely to truly understand the challenges are rather than design and based on everything in the literature, in the data, and so on. Yeah, that's just the perspectives I want to share.
Okay, thank you very much. So far we are very much keeping time. We, according to the outline, we are working with speakers now have the possibility to respond to other speaker statements or to ask questions and follow-up questions. Does anyone want to do so? It doesn't look like it. So
can I ask you a question?
Sure, go ahead.
I want to ask a question from the perspective of policy making. I don't know whether anyone has expertise in that, but I'm happy to hear the insights and intuition from everyone regarding policy making. So we all appreciate the significance and the importance of ethics. But then from the other perspective, right? So AI is very new, and the community, researchers, the public, and the policymakers do not have full understanding of the technology yet. So the regulations, policies from yesteryear do not apply directly, do not apply very well to the new AI technology, the next generative AI model that is being developed. So I wonder if anyone can share any insights. So what we should do, how not just as the individual, but as a society, as a community, as a scientific society. So anyone.
Dr. Fleischmann?
Yeah, that's a great question, Dr. Zhao. Thank you for posing. So I have limited expertise in the policy domain, but one of my longtime collaborators, Sherry Greenberg in the LBJ School of Public Affairs, has extensive experience both as a legislator in the Texas House for 10 years, as well as as a faculty member in the LBJ School of Public Affairs for over 20 years and doing research in terms of technology policy. I think that one of the major challenges that we face is that policy writ large, but particularly in terms of IT and AI, has tended to be reactive rather than proactive. So we've seen this in relation to social media. And actually, I think this is an interesting contrast from the way that we regulate pharmaceuticals, for example. So if you have a new vaccine or new drug that you want to put on the market, then we're usually talking about years of double-blind clinical trials that would be undertaken prior to the release of the product. Whereas for IT, the regulation is much lighter, and it's typically more of an attitude of let's release it, see what happens, and clean up the messes later. And again, with social media, we've seen that doesn't always have the best consequences, and often it becomes a situation where it's hard to put the genie back in the bottle after the fact. Of course, how new or old AI is somewhat depends on one's definition of AI. I've heard a bunch of different computer scientists give very different definitions of AI. But I mean, we've been thinking about these issues for a while. Actually, at the fabulous workshop that you organized in Knoxville in May, I really enjoyed, especially the dinner conversation that several of us had about the different incarnations of AI and the different AI hype cycles and AI winters that we've experienced. And I think several of us shared experiences of having sort of hedged or walked away from AI as the label, and for my own work, to my detriment, admittedly. So early work published in communication with the ACM in 2005 on transparency in AI, but my collaborator Al Wallace was a computational modeler, and so he wanted us to use computational modeling in the title and throughout. So I think that paper might have had a different reception, especially sort of different degree of perceived relevance today had the title choice been different. But I mean, certainly with generative AI, there are huge advances that have happened in a very short period of time, very parallel and similar to what we saw in terms of advances in social media. So I think the question is, can we change how we do policy in the IT space? I don't think it's a viable scenario to try to take that medical example of trying to spend years testing and regulating before actually releasing products. But I do think we'll need to get better at anticipating the implications of technologies. I think that actually is like the responsibility for that is on everyone in society. Of course, policymakers and regulators have important roles to play, but again, the developers of the technologies have important roles, and a lot of people are calling this an Oppenheimer moment for computer scientists and others involved in the development of AI, that they're building technologies that have such major ethical implications. So it's critical that everyone is thinking about how, in your case, you're doing amazing work to leverage AI for good, to benefit people who have Alzheimer's and related dementias. That's a really exciting, important, profound application. And other, colleagues here are doing, really wonderful work with really positive applications. I mean, certainly being able to detect disinformation, come up with solutions to that related to the work that Dr. Liu is doing. There's, lots of exciting work here that can be done, but I think it's important that all of us as researchers and everyone in industry is thinking about the implications of our work. The public, again, is more aware and has the opportunity to become more aware through improvements to K through 12 education, thinking about, making sure that we're covering AI and its societal implications, lifelong learning opportunities through organizations such as public libraries and community organizations. And, but yeah, I think we need to be more proactive in terms of regulation. We need to think about what technologies are in the foreseeable future, what their societal impacts and implications might be, and if there's anything that we can do ahead of time to try to steer them in more societally beneficial ways, rather than waiting to see the messes that get created and try to solve them. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Courtney?
Can I jump in on that? I totally agree. Obviously, we need to be proactive rather than reactive with regulation. But that also it predicates having some sort of stronger communication system between science, technology, development, and policy making. So what we're seeing right now in Congress, right, is individuals who rarely use the technologies that they're now being told are very dangerous and they need to regulate. So they're having a hard time being proactive because some of these they didn't even know were happening and they don't have much understanding of technically how they even work. So there has to be a system in place, perhaps a more robust system that creates a continuous sort of communication chain pipeline between what's happening in the labs and what policy is coming, right? And I think in some ways, the medical example is a really good one, Ken, because we do have a pretty strong system through the FDA where we have communications with NIH and we have protocol in place. And a lot of this comes out of the world, the results of World War II and some of the really massive atrocities, right? But we perhaps could borrow some of those systems to create a more robust, proactive communication system and testing process that leads to more direct, proactive regulation. So that's just a thought that I'm having is it's obvious to all of us that we need proactive regulation, but right now that would never occur in Congress. They're totally ill-equipped to do so. So I also think to what extent is NSF working on this sort of proactive policy making? Is this one of their initiatives? But also NIH, if you look at precision health, I mean, AI is the foundation now of so much healthcare. So both of these entities need to be really involved in thinking about how are they shaping policy making. And some of that is through the funding, right? So if you get a grant from NIH or NSF, are they requiring you to think ahead of time about what are the policy implications of this work and how are you going to disseminate those basic science results to policymakers so that they can understand them and think, okay, so you've sort of explored this. It doesn't actually have an immediate technological function that people can use, but it's basic science that will eventually, and we need to have basic policy making around the basic science that will lead to more proactive, robust policy down the line when we actually have technologies like social media that turn out to have really deleterious social impacts.
Okay, Dr. Liu would like to respond.
Yeah, I think what I want to contribute is more like a challenging instead of an answer to the question. So I think part of the challenge that comes with the AI audit regulation, the policy making, is the kind of lack of standardization and also inconsistency in a global context. So it has different layers. So for example, EU has their own policies in terms of EU AI regulation, and United States have their policy, and also other countries have different policies which are connected to the laws and also the practice in different areas. So for example, when we are trying to regulate AI in the context of information access, a major challenge people are trying to tackle is to regulate AI so that it doesn't generate harmful contents or the contents that and also protect intellectual property in generated information, and these will connect to different areas of regulations policies that also differ across different countries and different cultures. So that's part of the this inconsistency and also the differences is part of the contribute to the part of the complexity in AI regulation, auditing, and policy making. And also, is apart from these higher level issues, there are also the measurement level, where it's about how we actually measure the risk and threats of certain AI technologies. So how do we estimate the risk? I think this is a part of the proactive technology, proactive policy or technology we're trying to develop. One of the first steps is to proactively estimate the risk of different parts and impossible in some potential task contexts in some domains, so we can proactively reduce the task and reduce the risk, and also protect people, vulnerable communities from certain threats coming from AI. So these measurements also comes with a lot of inconsistencies and also complexities. So nowadays there are a lot of research that are going on in this area. So some people rely on human assessors to annotate AI risk and use that as part of ground truth to evaluate AI systems. So this kind of annotation often comes with their own biases. So different people interpret the outputs of AI differently. So that contribute to inconsistency in assessments and system evaluation. And some of the research employ AI to assess AI risks. So using an AI model to evaluate the risk of another AI model, that also comes with some problems in evaluation. And some of our own the research that comes from our own group also found that on the one hand, AI can in some contexts can amplify the social biases that are inherent from the biased data that generated by human. That's part of the training data, and AI can amplify the bias in those training data. On the other hand, AI sometimes can also be cognitive bias, meaning AI is making mistakes similar to the way that human do. So for example, when we ask human to judge the quality of documents, we found that the initial documents we give to human will affect their internal threshold, and which will affect their evaluation in the following documents. So their threshold is not as stable or as consistent as we think. So that will lead to unfair results in judgments. So we found that similar mistakes, similar biases also happens in AI judgment. So when some people claims that we can use AI to replace human to do those assessments that will lead to so that we can get fair results, that's not always the case, because the AI models we train on human generated data can also make mistakes like humans. So I think those complexities, involves biases in training data, involves inconsistency across different cultures, different countries, different legal systems. I think that they all contribute to the complexities in AI policy making. So when we try to develop standardized AI policies, evolving proactive AI risk measures, we should take into account the entire context, not just the AI technology itself.
Yeah, I find it really exciting where this discussion is going, and it reminds me of the symposium that took place in early May, because in a sense, what we are finding out is that we need to revisit many of the assumptions we make about the context in which we do things, because AI, obviously, it would be desirable for AI to be developed for good, but we also know that AI also is developed intentionally for bad, etc. And so how to create a system of regulation, especially in the present context of political polarization, that would be comparable to the creation of the FDA decades ago in a very different kind of social-political and socio-economic environment, is a major challenge, obviously. So in a sense, we need to acquire a better understanding of the larger context in which the totality, so to speak, which is exactly what Dr. Liu was referring to, that we are working with under present circumstances. Dr. Cronley, looks like you would like to add.
I just think that Dr. Liu's point about predicting sort of risks is super useful, like concrete recommendation for how do you create regulation. Well, we have to have like predictive models that would then inform the policy making. But like, I think to myself, are the predictive models kind of circular on AI? Like what parameters are you putting into the models and who gets to decide? And given that a lot of risks are not necessarily things that we anticipate or were intended, like social media was designed to like help connect people, and it does do that. It just turns out that when people get together, they can get snippy, right? Like at an emergent system, like at a macro level, that can get pretty nasty. So are we even able to predict all the risks? I guess so. So I have like a couple of questions, like who gets to decide what parameters you put into those risk models? And how do the models predict like emergent risks or processes that would occur through like, you know, macro level scale up AI systems? And some of this is beyond my technical mind, so maybe I'm not thinking the right way about it, but I'd love to hear like more about that.
Thank you. I think all of these are very good questions. We trying to start with some very specific task. So, for example, when we do our empirical experiments, we trying to the kind of task we initially focus on is how people judge information and how people and the accuracy of capturing misinformation from people. So when they are, interacting with the information retrieved by search engines or the information generated by language models, to what extent they can capture those the misinformations. So one thing we're trying to achieve in this specific context is based on their previous interaction behavior, the way they interact with search results, the way they interact with generated information. We try to capture what kind of belief they have. You know, for example, if they only interact with information with certain perspective, which is aligned with certain perspective, but not other perspective, not other opinions, then we can kind of capture, characterize the kind of bias they have in mind. And we're trying to send out reminders like, okay, maybe you're more biased towards this kind of perspective, this kind of opinion. What about other things, the other results or generated contents that are not aligned with your existing belief? So that way, we're trying to reduce the risk of biased judgments and decisions. So around that, we did some experiments, and also we look at how those kind of bias will contribute to their people's vulnerability to different types of misinformation. Some medical misinformation that are aligned with at least partially aligned with their existing belief will lead to higher chance of acceptance, and then will affect their decision in personal health management. So that is also kind of bias, confirmation bias. We're trying to proactively capture before they make their final decision. We're trying to train the model that can capture those kind of biases and proactively recommend diversified information or remind them about information that could be potentially useful, but not necessarily consistent with what they think this problem is, what they think the answer looks like. So that way we can systematically reduce the risk of biased judgment. We don't make judgment for the user, but we want to make sure they have full access to the useful information for the task they are working on. But in a broader context, we look at the risks in general. There are, of course, risks that could come from other kind of cognitive bias, and also the risk can come from algorithmic biases, so social biases, and also the risks that come from harmful contents. I feel like these kind of risks, threats may require different kind of models, or also different ways of intervention. In some of the risks, it's more useful to provide intelligent nudging or some reminders, some warning labels on the results, for example. But some of the other risks may be better handled with for example, adjusting the ranking algorithms in search engines, and also fine-tuning the model in different ways. So that will require different techniques. So but at the policy level, I think it's still really complex because of the inconsistencies I just mentioned, and also as you mentioned, the entire regulatory landscape is evolving. Right. So when we have a completely new model comes out, or application come out, the previous model that works pretty well in prediction risk could become useless. So that way we need to adjust the things we use. So for different kind of risks, as researchers, we need to kind of test and decide what parameters we use in this particular model. And to achieve the empirically better results in terms of, for example, accuracy or recall of the accuracy of capturing the bias, the instance, and the recall of capturing all, if not all, at least most of the bias instance proactively to develop and then develop interventions to address that. Yeah, I mean, from the researcher perspective, it could also come with bias, just like I mentioned in AI audits. When we look at how human assessors assess different systems, that could involve bias on assessors themselves that lead to unfair results. And it could also happen in our research. So I think in the end, we have made some preliminary. We have some preliminary results, made some progress towards this direction, this vision, but I think there are still a lot of open questions in both research and practice side.
Yeah, in many ways, what this discussion is pointing us towards is that it's related to the distinction between natural intelligence and artificial intelligence. And it took the human species centuries to come up with a form of governance that is somewhat consistent with our natural intelligence, and how it is fraught with complexity and contradictions and flaws and faults, etc. And but what this really raises is a question about the role of expertise in the 21st century, relating to these sophisticated technologies that really only experts can understand, and only experts are in a position to anticipate what kinds of threats might emanate or will emanate from AI, or how to protect against badly intended AI, etc. So in a sense, what's needed here is a form of really a regime of self-governance that essentially is established among experts who will be required, who may have to be mandated to establish a system of regulations that they understand, relying on outside information, etc., etc., etc. But a parallel to a form of governance designed for natural intelligence, that's designed for artificial intelligence. So we still have almost half an hour. I think it might make sense for me to share the questions that I've sent out to speakers, and we essentially can engage in self-government here and pick and choose from the questions that I've suggested. So the initial questions are very basic, and they definitely have already been addressed by several of you. And so we can move to the more interesting questions. And so what I'll do is share the screen with the questions, and then any of you who would like to address any of the questions, just indicate that you would like to, and we'll go from there. How does it sound? Okay, very good. Okay, so here are the questions. I'll quickly go over the questions, and then we can continue the discussion. Why is a focus on AI and ethics needed? What is the link between AI and ethical issues, dilemmas, and challenges? Many of these issues obviously already have been addressed. What general and concrete problems must we consider and address as far as the link between AI and ethics is concerned? Examples, concrete examples of which we also already have received quite a few. A very useful tool, obviously, to communicate the importance of this. What are important challenges involved in designing trustworthy AI? What risks could result from neglecting issues of trust in developing AI? Is there empirical evidence indicating that ethically designed technology will produce better technologies? Is there a link between user experience and ethical design? And if so, what kind of link? The problem of algorithmic bias, lack of security, and loss of public trust, for instance, in government with regard to certain policies, a particular brand, other kinds of technology, appears to be unavoidable. How might an explicit focus on ethics alleviate concerns and worries about such issues? In terms of ethical issues, could the deployment of AI be dangerous? If so, to whom or what and how? Does the difference between human intelligence and artificial intelligence have a bearing on ethical concerns in relation to the development and proliferation of AI? ChatGPT, obviously, is a prime example for this. Is it possible that increased reliance on AI will strengthen or weaken the role and status of ethics in society? And if so, why and how? And finally, from an ethical vantage point, what risks or concerns are especially deserving of critical attention? Any attention, but also critical attention. And Dr. Fleischmann already referred to the importance of this aspect of AI and ethics. So, Dr. Fleischmann, would you like to go ahead?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Dom. So these are great questions. Thank you for putting these together, and definitely far more than we could cover in this period of time, but really excellent starting points. And so I want to take the issue of trust that's across D, E, and H. And I think the really critical thing is that what we're building is calibrated trust in AI. So we need to have public trust in AI and individuals' trust in AI that's commensurate with the trustworthiness of the AI. So we do indeed need to design trustworthy AI, as noted in D. We need to make sure that people can form informed trust judgments. So for E, we don't want people just trusting it because it's AI or distrusting it because it's AI. We want people to be able to make informed decisions about which AI systems should or shouldn't be trusted. I think the implications here are very large. Certainly, yes, in H, the risk of loss in public trust. I think this is one of the best tools we have for incentivizing particularly large commercial entities to consider the ethical implications of technology, because we have to think about, for any individual or for any organization, what their end goals are. And for a large commercial entity, their goals are to provide value to the shareholders. And so they're trying to make a profit. And certainly we've seen a lot of cases where very large companies have lost the public trust because of various technological mishaps. Increasingly, those are now starting to involve AI in various ways. And so if you promote a particular technology as being a particular AI-based technology, for example, as being trustworthy, but then it turns out in practice that that technology is not actually so worthy of the public's trust, then that can lead to the public abandoning that company, that brand. This is true of government as well. So where people feel led astray by government, they'll lose trust in government. I think that's actually part of the challenge to the earlier discussions of trust in experts. That what we've seen has been a very widespread loss of trust and expertise among the general public in the past decades, which is very disconcerting in a number of ways. I think, there are people are pretty smart. There are some good reasons for it. So certainly, I think with COVID, we can see some really interesting examples of where government messaging, including in this country, was not always where it wasn't just the science that was driving the messaging. There were other considerations as well. And I think it's fascinating to see from in March 2021, Reuters was reporting that Russian-backed media outlets were promoting vaccine disinformation in the US. But then we saw earlier this month in June 2024 that Reuters was reporting that the US DoD was funding disinformation campaigns about COVID vaccines, specifically COVID vaccine developed in China, in the Philippines, and other countries around the world. So we've seen every government in the world, including ours, being capable of leveraging disinformation to some very, in problematic ways, to problematic ends. And with now the rise of deepfakes, so synthetic media where you can create very photorealistic, audio realistic depictions of, say, famous politicians or other celebrities and media figures, etc. You can very easily create cheap fakes as well. So you can even displace video content in a way that makes it seem like something happened, or to lose some of the context of something. But with deepfakes, you can even take it a step further, because with deepfakes, typically you can find some of the hallmark telltale signs of video editing, of the splicing not quite working out right. But with deepfakes, you can make it very smooth, and you can create something that never actually happened, but make it photorealistic in a way that makes everyone think that it did. And I think that the biggest danger of synthetic media, of deepfakes, is not that the public would occasionally believe that something happened that didn't actually happen. I mean, that's what we kind of think of in terms of deepfakes, is the potential for us to be deceived into thinking something happened that didn't happen. And that's a very big danger. But I think the larger danger with deepfakes is the potential for the loss of public trust in video as testimonial evidence. So one of my doctoral students, recently graduated doctoral alums, Nitin Verma, who's now a postdoc at Arizona State University in the New York Academy of Sciences, did his dissertation research on the societal implications of deepfakes. And one of the things that emerged from his research, and that really has concerned both of us, is the possibility that in a situation like the murder of George Floyd, where video evidence was critical for having some accountability to get some criminal charges toward the murderers of George Floyd. That if we lived in a society 5, 10, 15 years down the road where people lost trust and faith in video as testimonial evidence because of synthetic media, because of deepfakes, that we would lose one of the few tools we have to hold power to account, and that it would allow for the kind of systemic injustices such as racialized violence in the U.S. The police, many police forces, unfortunately, as well as other aspects of society, to not actually face any repercussions. So it's a really, it has the potential to destabilize almost everything in society if we can't actually believe what we see anymore. That could have really far-reaching implications. And I think similarly with, of course, with ChatGPT, we have to assume that a lot of the text that we're reading online is automatically generated. A lot of, perhaps a lot of the content that we're receiving in students' term papers, etc., could potentially be automatically generated to various degrees. And so I think, that it's definitely raises some fascinating issues in terms of being able to determine the authenticity of content and whether and how it was developed by humans and or machines. And I think that's increasingly going to blur, that we're seeing, just as most of us are already cyborgs to some degree, we have some technological components integrated. For those of us with eyeglasses, or at least our view of the world is mediated by this simple technology of how the glass is meant to improve our vision. Of course, we have a lot of people have pacemakers and other technologies directly physically embedded into their bodies. We're reliant on our mobile devices almost at a level that they become a part of ourselves. And there's a lot of research on how when a mobile device is in sight, or even when it's not in sight, just the fact that it's in your pocket can change how people perceive the world. It's hard to get away from these scenarios where we are interacting with these technologies in a way that it's hard to see where the human user ends and the technology begins. So as we have increased prompt engineering with large language models like ChatGPT, I think we're going to increasingly come across content that has some human origin, some technological origin, and it's really challenging to figure out what degree of which it is, and ultimately whether or not that content can and should be trusted.
Thank you very much. Would anyone else like to go next or respond to Dr. Fleischmann's comments?
I like to address question J on the list, but probably from a slightly different perspective. And here talk about the difference between human intelligence and artificial intelligence, but the opposite scenario is even more concerning, right? So today AI is still very limited in terms of empathy, in terms of self-consciousness. But if one day, of course, this is under debate, even top researchers, scientists do not agree with each other, but there is this possibility that if AI, artificial intelligence, is not distinguishable from human intelligence, then that is very, very concerning, right? So, and then that may lead to this serious problem of extinction risk for human and many subsequent consequences. So that's another ethical perspective. I think the AI researchers need to pay attention to. So I'm not addressing the question in its original way, but think it's an interesting problem for researchers to think about and to pay attention to.
But I do think that's a really interesting conundrum, right? Is what is human in the context of increasing like technology? Like, so what is ethical in the context? I mean, I guess are ethics predicated on some basic sense of what is human and what is humanity? And is AI changing what is human? I mean, people already, like Ken was saying, a lot of people already have devices within their bodies that would make them considered like sort of half robotic. And when we allow thinking to sort of be done by AI within our own selves, well, so does the AI system develop the ethical parameters for itself? And what are the inherent risks there? And I guess one of the things to go back to with AI and ethics is the basic technical process, right? Is it's scraping tons of data. So it always goes back to, well, what are those sources of data? So in many ways, I'm not so sure that AI will produce necessarily, it's possible to produce new ethical problems, but in many ways, right, it's just going to intensify the existing ethical dilemmas and challenges and inequities that we already have, because it's based on human data, and those data are the patterns of data collection and representation reflect the inequities within our society. So I almost wonder if there is really even, I mean, it's a new packaging of an old problem, AI and ethics will be, right? With every technology, we seem to like use it to increase the betterment of a select small number of individuals, predominantly white and male, at the disadvantage of others, and AI seems to be doing that.
And that's an interesting way of thinking. So, you know, if we think about AI as just a technology, as a tool, and I think that's actually a good framework, right? To frame the challenge we're facing using, you know, a bigger framework, not just narrow down to AI itself. And the technology, on the other hand, does introduce new problems. For example, copyright issues. There's no clear definition about copyright today. So if I write a novel, use AI, so I create a picture using AI, make a piece of video. So there's kind of no clear definition about the copyright. And so currently, I think there are a few cases, there are lawsuits and so on. People claim that you know, you use your prompt are original ideas there for creation based on the prompt that does establish the copyright issue. And then another question is, in the future, if we go one step further, so should we copyright a prompt, right? So that a lot of potential issues may be, you know, brought to us by technology. I definitely agree that we want to consider the ethical consideration issues under this umbrella of technology impact and so on. And then under this framework, there are new challenges that that bring to the society by the tremendous capability of AI. Just AI is so powerful. It's a create a problem we never encountered before.
I
Chikun?
kind of think.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Chikun.
Yeah, one thing I want to mention is about how we so with more and more AI applications, it becomes difficult for us to fairly and ethically evaluate human contributions. So in many of the you know studies where we look at how human use and judge information, we also look at the connection between the way they use information with creativity and also interest development. So when we think about when we try to judge the creativity within a product or within, you know, intellectual property, then how do we fairly judge human contribution? So in the case of where AI is involved, does that all narrow down to all the human contribution narrow down to a very good, creative, effective prompt? Or you know, in terms of product, how should we fairly judge the creativity behind this product, and how should we fairly decide the commercial value of the products, and how much, you know, people want to pay if they know that this is like half human, half AI, or entirely human, or even though they are roughly the same thing, is that fair to give, you know, larger different value to those different things? And how would that affect the way the entire, you know, free market works? So these are all open questions and related to ethics, and also related to how we judge value of human creativity and human labor.
Dr. Cronley?
Well, I really think it all goes down to just thinking through, okay, well, what are the basic capabilities that we know all individuals need in order to participate fully in society and to live long and healthy lives to their satisfaction? And then how does AI change those capabilities? And then that sort of creates the parameters around which we would do this risk modeling and think through what are the potential risks, and how does AI change those capabilities, and what regulatory frameworks need to be in place to put sort of roadblocks or barriers or parameters around the AI's application in this context to mitigate potential social injustices and risks to unfair risks to certain groups of people. In my mind, that's kind of how the ethical roadmap would work. So it's understanding what are the basic capabilities that we as a society agree that we all need to have in order to live long and healthy and happy lives. How does AI interact to disrupt those capabilities, and how can we model the risks within those disruptions such that we then can produce policy, regulatory recommendations?
Very good. So we are obviously approaching the 90-minute limit, but I would like to provide the opportunity at least to for some closing statements. And obviously, we're all educators. Obviously, all of what we've been discussing has a very strong bearing on how we educate, what the content and purpose of education is. And so I'm just wondering whether each of you would like to make a statement within your particular field, how you think education has to respond to these challenges, and whether we need to include priorities and objectives in education that so far have been non-existent or marginal or suppressed, etc. Can we as educators and researchers do anything in this context to increase the likelihood that the proliferation and the development of AI will not turn out to be entirely catastrophic, to be somewhat dramatic? Go ahead. So.
Well, I think getting students to attend these kind of conversations to begin with is a good start. We rarely get students in attendance. Those of us who supervise graduate students, I think when students are working on AI related research, thinking through what are the ethical components of the science that you're working on, understanding where AI intersects with our fields, be it with the fundamental science of developing these neural networks and these large language models, or in a much more applied way where I am, when you're looking at robots to help with older adults, or smart homes for individuals who are trying to move from homelessness into housing, formerly incarcerated individuals. Are we using AI models to predict whether or not they should be paroled or not paroled, and whose data are feeding into those models? So the more we all understand where AI intersects with our field and how that's going to change the practices, and then being able to understand, as Ken said at the very beginning, just encouraging our students to pose critical questions around the AI technologies that are emerging in our field, rather than just adopting things as like inherently optimistic to improve things or inherently pessimistic, so I'm not going to adopt it because it's going to be terrible. That's also not a super useful solution to the problem. Is always engaging in a critical conversation with our students around, how does this technology disrupt the way we do things, and how is this disruption going to produce greater benefits and greater good and more equitably distributed goods, and how is it going to increase risk for those already disproportionately at risk for the negative effects of our society, right? So like, again, just that critical stance that we take, as well as understanding where does AI interact with our field.
Yeah, I like to add on top of that. Apparently AI has created a lot of interest, and in some areas even hype, but the adoption of technology is relatively low. There was a recent international survey studied the general public from 6 different countries, Japan, US, and a few other countries. I don't remember all of them, but the number of people who are regularly using generative AI tools is actually 2% in Japan, 2% in UK, but 6% in the United States. I think education is very important. We should educate not students, the public, and so that people know AI is important and know how to use AI. Courtney mentioned that regulators do not know AI. This is true. So therefore, AI literacy is very, very important from K-12 to students in college, professors in college, and legislators, the public. Everyone need to. So I don't know how to address this problem. But I think this is a problem to be addressed.
I think on top of the points that everybody else have raised, I think it's important to make AI education and literacy training accessible. So especially we should utilize the infrastructures, institutions, organizations, and equipments we have already have in place for informal learning. So going outside of the classroom, for example, doing tutorials or in public libraries, doing running sessions in makerspace, and adding training sessions and in vocational schools, and make sure those opportunities to AI literacy training and education is accessible to basically everyone through from different communities. Right? And also it's important to incorporate this human-centered approach and perspective into AI education from the very beginning. So it's not just as part of the higher education package, it's also part of the informal learning in different places. We should not only highlight the technical capability of AI, but also what are the threats and opportunities from human perspective. So how should we be prepared for a future where people can effectively collaborate with AI in different places? So we can't just assume that AI will replace someone or eventually everyone in all the job positions, because for example, AI is also biased and AI can make mistakes like human do. So so then what's the point of replacing human with AI if we face the similar or the same problems in some task contexts? So all of those ideas and knowledge should be fairly delivered at different levels through different channels, especially in informal learning context, to people from different communities.
Yeah, I really agree with the great points, Dr. Liu, about informal learning and formal education, I think museums are a particularly great site. So having there are some already compelling examples, but museums that boost the AI literacy of the public. I think also we can think about in television, for example, in children's cartoons, often there's some kind of moral of the story of teamwork or friendship or togetherness or something like that. Maybe it should be AI literacy in some cases. There are ways that programming aimed at a wide range of ages and demographics could potentially help to highlight these points. I think that definitely that has to extend into K through 12 education. And Dr. Zhao, as you were saying that, these technologies are not actually being as adopted as quickly as one might expect. Also, a lot of people are using the technologies without being aware. So Pew Research has, documented the degree to which people don't even understand what AI is or aren't even aware when they're using AI. So that's an important part of AI literacy, understanding when you are using AI, and that's sort of the most fundamental aspect of understanding is just awareness that you are using it in the first place. Then you can start thinking about how to use it differently. And then back to Dr. Cronley's great point about creating these joint conversations as we've been able to do here. And as needs to be happening more often in the academy, more often in higher education. We actually have at UT Austin a graduate portfolio program in ethical AI. It's funded by NSF Research Traineeship NRT grant. And we have courses from engineering, computer science, public affairs, communication, architecture, the School of Information, and other fields, where we have students from nursing and as well as many of those fields, social work, many other fields, students taking these courses and completing this. It's effectively a graduate interdisciplinary minor in ethical AI. And I think we need to have future lawyers talking to future technologists, talking to future social workers, talking to future librarians to create these conversations around how we can best leverage AI to serve and benefit everyone in society, and particularly doing the most good for those with the most need.
Okay, thank you very much. The time is up. I will stop the recording in a moment. And so we have 2 more sessions, of course. One session will start in less than 30 minutes on AI and its social implications. And another session will be taking place tomorrow on AI and social justice. So thank you very much. This was a very informative and very exciting discussion. I look forward to the next 2 discussions as well. And we will be in touch. Thank you very much.